Don't look now, but you're listening to the Yellow Bag Brigade, the authorities on everything geek. And now, whether you like it or not, here are your hosts, Michael Nystrom and Johan Arwidmar.
Hello, Johan.
Hi, Michael.
So, what's today's topic, my friend?
The topic for today is more on the waiting side of things, why you always need to wait for the next Windows version. And once it's released, Windows is not going to be ready for you just because it was released. It means that you can now start to do your testing.
Yeah, it's a challenge, right? I mean, I worked with a customer today, and they really want to do Windows Server 2019, and you know, most of it works. They don't have any really bad experience, but then third-party application might or might not work, and agents might or might not work, and they go like, but it should work. Yes, it should. But here's the thing. When Microsoft releases a new version of Windows, it's released, right? And it's released to everyone. That means that a lot of vendors, hardware vendors and software vendors, they get the version of Windows at the same time you do, right? That's cool. Now they can start work on fixing things and verifying that everything works. So it does take a while before everything actually works. And the time is, what do you think? It's going to be like a week, 2 weeks?
Certainly not just a few weeks, but everything from a few months up to maybe 5-6 months is time frames you can expect when implementing a new version of Windows 10 or, for that matter, Windows Server.
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned, Michael, it will take the vendor some time to catch up. You also need some time to start to test in your environment, because as much as Microsoft probably would like to test everything, they simply cannot test everything. They can only test so much because there are so many interesting configurations out there in the world that Microsoft will never be able to test.
No, I mean, I worked with a customer today, and they're about to deploy Windows 10, and most of it works. But then they said, well, we have this issue with our sound cards, and I said, okay, so what's the issue? Well, the drivers aren't really signed. Well, then you need to go to the vendors and ask them to, sign them. Yeah, it's just that the sound cards we're using is in the price range of about a couple of $1,000, like $10,000 each. It's like, holy cow! What's that kind of a? Well, we use it for our production recording, and the drivers were specially developed for us. They were never signed, so now we need to go back to the vendor and ask them to create signed drivers so we can use them for Windows 10 for all the sound cards we have. Yeah, you need to do that, and that's going to take a while. And so things like that is happening all the time. I work with both servers and clients, and you do the same thing, and it's the same on servers. But on servers, it's not usually a sound card. On servers, you have other things like the backup agent and the monitoring agent and the whatever network thing agent and the network adapter and the
storage controllers.
Yeah, storage controller.
Network cards.
Yeah, and
fun things.
Yeah, and here's the thing: you really want the storage controller to be, let's say, reliable. Otherwise, it's going to be interesting when you lose all the data. So yeah, it takes a while. And I mean, you could go into I use the Windows hardware catalog, the Windows Server catalog. And the fun thing is that you go into the Windows Server catalog and go like, okay, let's pick up everything that is supported by Windows Server 2016. It gives the 9,000 items. Cool. You go for Windows Server 2019 that has been out for about 6 months and go like, there's 2,000 items. Okay, so we have another 7,000 items to test, verify, and certify. Yep. Pretty much like that.
Yeah, but the thing is, organizations, they learned their hard way by now, but Windows 10 simply end server, for every version that comes out, the organizations, meaning you, the admin, has to start to do a lot of testing on your own. So that means you need to have at least a copy of every model that you have in your environment, so you can start to test if not only the application is working, but also drivers. Sometimes you need a BIOS update. Low-level applications like VPN clients, if you're using third-party antivirus or third-party disk encryption, please don't. But if you do, you have to certify that part as well and start to test those things. And again, it takes time. And also the fact that the vendors need some time to start to create new versions, or even worse, sometimes vendors they had support for the hardware you're having for a given version of Windows 10, say go back to 1709. But now that hardware is 4 years old, so they just dropped support for it. So even though Windows 10 used to work for it with the vendor driver, now in the next version of Windows 10 it doesn't. So sometimes you need to remove drivers to get the hardware back to work, because what Microsoft tries to do is, if a vendor had a system that worked and they no longer support it, Microsoft actually tries to take over that, I wouldn't say responsibility, but they try to provide drivers for that model. And that means you need to yank them away, the vendor drivers, that the inbox driver now can kick in and takes its place, because otherwise it loses in terms of driver ranking and other fun things.
And a fun thing with the support statement, I'm not going to point out any vendor here, but we had a piece of hardware and it did run Windows 7, and we did the upgrade and it worked. And then after a while we got issues. Contacted the vendor and said, well, we have these following issues. Okay, that's weird. Yeah, because this model is supposed to be supported. Yeah, it's supported. We're going to check this out and we're going to get back to you. And they did. And they get back and said, well, that model is no longer supported. What? It was supported on Monday. Yes. Now it's Wednesday, it's not supported anymore. Why is it not supported? Because it was supported on Monday. Yes, we can't make it work. Therefore, it's not supported anymore. So there is always two ways to fix a support statement. Well, they either fix the issue or they just declare the item to be not supported anymore. It's another way to support hardware by defining that, no, we can't make it work, therefore it's not supported anymore. Most vendors doesn't do that, but we have been in that situation. That also means that you really need to be sure that, you and I have a mutual friend that managed like 450,000 computers. And we talked about, new versions of Windows, and you need to test and verify. And he said, yeah, we need to do that. The thing is that we don't really test bare metal deployment much, because we can always make that work. What we really need to test is the in-place upgrade. And I was like, well, if it's running on the machine, and it's going to be supported on that kind of hardware, just run the in-place upgrade. No, turns out that applications doesn't survive in-place upgrade all the time. So they need to verify that the application actually survives. If they don't, they usually need to uninstall the application before they do the in-place upgrade. And after the in-place upgrade, they reinstall it. Because the installer itself has, kind of two modes. This is the way we do it in Windows 10, 1709, and this is the way we do it in Windows 10, 1809. And that's not really obvious for everyone. You just assume that, hey, it works when you do a bare metal deployment, therefore the application works on the new version of Windows, therefore it should work when you do an in-place upgrade.
So I have a story I'd like to share.
Yes.
I was working with a vendor, HP, and on one of the hardware models we were deploying, they had multiple drives, and the machine would lose the second drive every now and then.
Okay.
Like once a week, it would just drop the drive. And the hardware said later it was back. No data lost, it just lost the drive, and I had to reboot the box and it was back.
Okay.
And first, obviously, I thought we had a few bad drives, so I ordered more drives and put them in. No, it did not help. and been troubleshooting for probably a good day or 2 days. Okay, I need help. So I reached out to some good friends I have at HP and asked them, what the heck is going on? It's like, and after a while, one of them reached back and said, you're not running in mixed mode, are you? And yes, I was. I had the machine configured to support both BIOS-based because we did tests for Windows 7 deployments, but it also had the UEFI capabilities, so we could do Windows 10 testing at the same time.
Yeah.
And it turns out that most of the tests that hard vendors are doing for Windows 10 is UEFI only, because that's one of the sort of, certified for Windows 10 things.
Yeah.
So you not only need to worry about the drivers and the apps, you also need to worry about BIOS configurations.
Yes.
When you start to certify your hardware for Windows 10. And that was an interesting learning for sure.
Yeah, one thing that I learned is that the companies that says, well, we don't really care about what kind of computers our users have, they can buy whatever they want. That's really good. It's very friendly to the users, but when it comes to the fact that you're going to do these in-place upgrades and you need to deal with drivers and models and certifications and all that stuff, having 4 different models, that's fine, you can do that. Having 50 different models is going to be a nightmare. And it's just going to be worse over time, because then you buy new machines with new hardware and new machines with new hardware, and they need to survive like 5 years. It's like, oh, horrible. Yeah.
So it's not the end of the world, because obviously Microsoft and vendors realizing that this is a bit of a painful, having to retest hardware every single time there is a new version of Windows. So what happened quite recently is that, first of all, Intel are starting with a new driver type format. It's basically comes out of the Windows Store basically as a sort of an app type driver instead of a driver type driver.
Yeah, universal.
And also
it's called
something. Yeah.
Universal driver model or something like that. Yeah, I know. It's cool.
Yeah, and also vendors are now starting to publish their drivers into the Microsoft catalog, but with the model information. Something that was not available before. Before, if I wanted to go get a driver for Model X, I have to go to the vendor and find Model X drivers and get them.
Yeah, and in the driver catalog, if you go to the to Microsoft Update, the only thing you could see there was like, well, here's the plug and play ID number, and that was it. It wasn't really, this is an HP driver, this is a Dell driver, and that is something that both you and me have been in situations where, you're deploying a machine and running an HP driver on a Dell machine doesn't really give you support. So you might need to have the driver for the vendor, even if another driver from another vendor kind of loads, but it's not going to be the correct driver.
Yeah, but think of this scenario, Michael. Vendors has already started to publish their drivers to the catalog, tagged with their model information, but also BIOS updates.
Yes.
What if there comes a time where every single vendor is doing that, publishing their BIOSes, their drivers with the correct tagging? That would mean when you do like scripting, deployment solutions, etc., now you can query a single source for those drivers rather than having to go through 10 different public catalogs that are changing every third week, but different on vendors. It's just
that kind of sad in one way, because the capability of doing this was introduced in, was it Windows Update WSS 3.2?
Long time ago.
Yeah, 3 point something. They had like the extension, and the idea of having the global Windows Update catalog was like, well, all the vendors will be able to put the drivers here, and we will be happy to distribute it for them. But nobody at that time was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Everyone's like, no, you need to go to our website and download our driver pack. I agree. It would be awesome if all the drivers were neutralized.
The keyword is if and when.
Yeah.
So right now we only seen a few examples, but hopefully in the year 2019 things will be better.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And you know that they changed. You know that, but not sure everybody knows, but they changed the behavior on the Windows Update site. Is it a year ago? It used to use the ActiveX control. You need to have the ActiveX control installed to query, to get downloads for everything. They removed that. Yeah, so now you can actually use PowerShell to query and download drivers directly from the Windows Update site, including patches, which is awesome. And you don't need to do any kind of authentication. So I've seen scripts that downloads the latest version of whatever patch you want to have, and it's going to find it, it's going to download it. You have it locally. You can do the same with drivers. And so it's getting better and better, but you still need to test. That's going to be the hard part. And how do you test in a smart way? You automate it, right? You use PowerShell to install and build and create reports and all that stuff. So automation is going to be key. But that's all for now. If you want, you can join us for the next episode where the topic is about not being hacked just because you need to do your job as an admin.
Thank you for listening to the Yellow Bag Brigade, the authorities on everything geek. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and if you didn't, that's your problem. Till next time, embrace automation